Hello, and welcome to another segment of the Coatesville Area Public Library's Oral History Project. I'm here today with Mr. Clarence W. Smith, a lifelong member of our community and certainly a very active member in our community. Good morning, Mr. Smith.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. We're glad to have you with us as a participant in our Oral History Project.
Thank you.
Clarence, you were born in 1935, right smack
Yes.
dab in the middle of the Great Depression.
Yes, oh yes.
Tell us about your memories of what life was like for a youngster in those days.
Well, really, it was, comparatively, it wasn't that bad because everybody was poor. So nobody knew what being affluent was. So as a consequence, if everybody's poor, everybody feels that they're doing okay. Everybody had kerosene lamps. Everybody had the little room with the half moon on the side, if you know what I mean. So these are the kind of things that you would just accept it and you didn't know anything else. But as you got older, then you found out, hey, I am poor, you know. But even though I was poor, I think I got the basic fundamentals, and I think I got a good upbringing from my parents. Of course, my mother passed away when I was like 7 years old, and I was more, you might say I was a product of a single-parent household because my father brought me and my sister up during World War II. So I think for a single-parent person, I think I did okay.
Yes. What are your memories of being a teenager in a country that was involved in a global war?
Well, I wasn't a teenager during World War II. World War II broke out, I was 6 years old in 1941. But I can remember, you know, radio broadcasts and so forth. There was no TV back then.
Yes.
So you really felt a sense of pride in being an American, I'll tell you that much, due to the fact that of course to this day, I still say sometimes I have to kick myself because I won't buy a foreign car. I won't buy a German or a Japanese car as a result of that. And there was a lot of propaganda that you read every day made you realize, hey, you got to hate the Germans, you got to hate these and so forth. But, you know, as you get older, you realize they were just people, and you can't hold them accountable for what their leaders got them into. But World War II was unique because I had 3 brothers in the service, and my sister and I were the only ones who were left at home. Like she was like 13 when my mother passed away, and I was 7. So you figure from 1941 to 1945, you read the daily accounts in the newspaper and so forth, you know, and you just hope that we won. And I'm glad we did, thank God.
Living in the Coatesville area, specifically the Rock Run area, and I should mention that many people refer to you affectionately as Rock Run Smitty.
That's something I never lived down. So.
For those of the viewers who might not know, can you give us an idea of exactly where Rock Run is? Can you name some streets that might delineate it for us?
There's Manor Road as part of Rock Run, Wagontown Road, there's Mount Airy Road, and there's Irish Lane. And believe it or not, I lived on Irish Lane.
Yes. So what schools were you attending for elementary grades?
Well, it's torn down now. My first school was Rock Run. School was first 6 grades of my life. I went there. Then from 7th grade, I went to Passtown, which was another story. Maybe we might get into it later. And then I did 1 year at Passtown, 2 years at Gordon Junior High School, which is now Benner. Then I went to Scott, which is now closed, but I went to Scott from 10th, 11th, and 12th. But I did 8th and 9th at, which is now Carl Benner. It used to be the old Gordon Junior High School. And, well, I might say, I can add that 7th grade was a year that I went to a segregated school because the way the system worked back in those days, from the first 6 grades in Rock Run, you know, the Caucasians and African Americans all went to school together, and there was no thought of, you know, color or anything. But then the 7th grade, which I later figured out to be the start of puberty, excuse me, we went to the old Passtown School, which was all black, and Rainbow, you know, was all white. And it was really funny because we'd all get on the bus together in Rock Run, then we ride up the Lincoln Highway. They would drop the black kids off at past town, and then pick us up on the way home. And to take the the white kids up to Rainbow. And we never thought anything about it. We just more or less accepted it because of the fact we didn't know any different. But it was impressed upon me then that the difference, and not the difference in like some of the friends I've had. I can remember a good friend of mine named Francis Hopton, and he and we used to go to the country club. We would caddy. I guess we were maybe 12, 13 years old. And we went to the movie theater called the Palace Theater, and they had a little barrier. It said one side for white, one side for black. So he came and sat on the side with me, and they made him leave. They made him get on the other side. They would not let him sit in the so-called black section. And so we ended up both getting kicked out of the movie. So we lost 12 cents.
Oh.
That's what it cost to go to the movie.
12 cents for the Palace Theater.
Yeah,
Where
the
was the
Palace.
Palace located?
The Palace was located right on Second, right where Shertox is now, right along in there. It was owned by a man, we just knew him as Mr. Laggy. I can't think of his real name, how you pronounce it. Lagos or something like that. We just called it Laggies. And the same situation existed at the Auditorium Theater, which I found that was run under the auspices of the Young Men's Christian Association. The balcony was ours, and the downstairs was yours, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Well, I want to go back to what you said about busing. With having the two races on the bus, there obviously must have been some social interaction.
Sure, the kids that you went to school with, they accepted the situation too, because they didn't know any different. They were just told, hey, you get on the bus and you stay on, you get off at Rainbow, and that was it. And nobody questioned the system back then because you didn't have anybody to really fight for you.
So there was no real sense among the students that this was wrong.
Well, we felt it was wrong, but we couldn't do anything about it. We just felt powerless to do anything. Because I made a lot of friends who I still consider them friends, white guys, white girls, and we're still friendly over the years. And I still see some of them at board meetings, and some of them are on the faculties of the various schools. But we never took it personal between us and them. It was not a confrontational thing. It was the way the system was set up, and the white kids or the black kids had no, we had no control over it.
But eventually you did reach a point where you were in integrated situations in schools themselves. That must have opened some new eyes and some new thoughts and ideas for you, right?
Yes, it did. It really did. It's like seeing how the other half really lives. And, Gordon, I enjoyed Gordon most of the time. I had a few little incidents there, but nothing really bad. And I can remember some teachers who motivated me and who made me realize that I was not as dumb as I thought I was, and made me feel that I had something to offer, and why not try to develop it instead of just stagnating. But I must say that as I got in high school, I'd started developing some bitterness. It was like, why should I push myself to excel academically when there was no job for me? We had, it was like, well, Clarence, you could do better than this, you could do this, you could do that. So my question was, why should I strive to get A's and B's when the only thing open to me is working at the VA hospital or Lucan's? Because if I didn't have the money for college. My father was a day laborer, and college was beyond me. And back in those days, if you were a C student or a B minus student, you didn't worry about going to college. If you were just A's and B students, got into college. And then there were certain colleges that would only take you. There were primarily black colleges in the South, like Morgan State, Maryland State, West Virginia State, Hampton, places like that. And let's face it, Hampton, it's in Virginia. They're going to look out for the black students in Virginia before they worry about some C average kid from Pennsylvania. So
it just never became a reality.
No, it
for
never
you.
did. It never did.
But you were nevertheless quite active in high school, I understand.
Well, I played a few sports, and I'm fairly active, so to speak. I must give a applauded to a person who really helped me a lot in high school was my track coach, Walt Funk. Walt Funk made me practice. He made me value hard work. And by my senior year, I was the fourth best half miler in the district, in District 1, which made me feel pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Funk, wherever you are, thank you.
Social life back then. What was a typical Friday or Saturday night?
Friday night back in those days was you go to a football game. After the football game, there was a dance either at the Masonic Hall on 7th Avenue and Merchant Street in Coatesville, or else there might be a dance at the Carver Court Community Center. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it was not integrated, believe me. But hey, at that time it didn't bother me at all. You know, the biggest thing was there were girls.
Ah, okay. Well, after high school, you moved into a variety of jobs over your lengthy career. Tell us about some of those.
Well, when I first went to the VA hospital, this was a federal installation, and I put in for a job, and I filled out my application, and so forth, information, so forth. And I was told in personnel that for you people, we have two avenues. You can either be a nursing assistant or a dietetic aide. So I chose to be a nursing assistant. And as a consequence, I was not happy, but I had to do something to pay the bills because by this time I had gotten married and had children. And so I worked as a nursing assistant until I could get something better. Then the government started opening up. So I went into the research laboratory and I worked under a gentleman who gave me a chance, Dr. Herbert Sprints. He's now passed away, but I worked under him for a while until my asthmatic problems got the best of me from being around the research animals, so I had to give that job up. And then another person, things just happened for me. It seems like I was in the right place at the right time. Dr. David Cohen had an opening in the psychology department, and thanks to Doris Grab, who was my old psychology teacher, I had picked up a few things. I gleaned a few things from her teaching, so I got in the psychology department, and I worked there for like 7 years doing psychological testing, you know, the ink blot test, the Rorschach, the GAT, the WACE, and so forth. Just doing psychological workup on patients, you know, writing my observations down. And sometimes I think I did myself more harm than good because I have a tendency to psychoanalyze people I talk to, including some of my fellow board members, you know,
Yes.
as you well know.
Tell me about transportation back then. How did you get from Rock Run to the VA hospital? What were you driving?
I was not driving.
Yeah.
When I first went to the VA hospital, I had to catch a bus. And we catch a bus from Rock Run down into Coatesville, then we catch a bus from Coatesville up to the VA. So it was a long process. So I did buy a car, finally, an old 1949 Pontiac convertible, which was a fire engine red.
Wow.
It was an attention getter.
You mentioned to me before that you've also been a supervisor in the transportation and engineering
Yes.
fields.
Yes. I was well, you might call it the motor pool in the service, but it's like transportation services we have here. I had a varied amount of things I had to do. We had to arrange trips off station, overnight trips, transfer patients to like Connecticut. Sometimes we'd have to transfer them to the different VAs. Set up recreation trips with our buses to go take the patients on fishing trips, which sometimes you wouldn't get back to like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And we had a varied amount of things we had to do. You
mentioned Masonic Lodge earlier, and I know that you are a Mason of some stature.
Oh, I'm a 32nd degree Mason. Yes.
Tell us about your affiliation with them and the types of things that the Masons have been doing over the years.
Well, it's mainly charitable. We do a lot of charitable things. We, look out for the widows of, Masons who have passed on. We do things within the community. We try to keep the kids off the street. We give little dances and things. It's something to try to keep the kids occupied so they don't get in trouble. And around the holidays, we distribute baskets of turkeys, the whole thing, to various needy people.
From the time that you first started with the Masons until now, have you noticed any change in the social issues that the Masons try to address?
Yes, we do. In fact, which I'm very proud of, we have started visitation among the lodges, among the white lodges and the black lodges. We have started to visit each other, which I think is a good thing, because that interflow and interchange of ideas is a very good thing. You know, if you don't know anything about a person, naturally you're going to look at him in a suspect way. But if you see this person, you say, hey, he's not a bad guy. His wants and needs are just like mine. You know, everybody wants to have a good life, a good quality of life.
Certainly. Can you think of any specific benefits that have resulted as a outgrowth of that interchange of ideas?
Well, I think we understand each other better, which is a start. That's the biggest thing. You have to have a beginning point. So that's the biggest thing I can say.
Tell us about your work with the board of the NAACP.
Well, you know, I hesitate to say that I've only been on the board now about 3 or 4 years. On the executive board, I've been in the NAACP as a member for about 15 or 20. But the biggest thing that I think of, we're getting involved, and we're getting away from this thing about marches and picketing and confrontation. What we're going for now, we're going through, shall we say, diplomatic negotiations. Mm-hmm. We're appealing to people, the precepts of like King had, to appeal to people's nature, to say, well, look, you know this is wrong, I know it's wrong, but I'm the victim. What are we going to do to alleviate this? It's a very small planet we live on. Let's face it, if we can't coexist, then nobody's going to live. You know, if you have your foot stuck on my back, holding me down, you're holding yourself back too. Mm-hmm. So let's face it.
Clarence, you've also managed to get yourself involved with the zoning board in Valley Township, and I'm sure you've probably got some interesting stories to relate there also.
Yes. Well, I've been with the zoning board for close to 20 years because I wanted to get involved, but they have what they call the Hatch Act when you work for the federal government. And the Hatch Act says you cannot serve in any elected capacity as long as you're a federal employee. So as a consequence, you could take an appointed position. So I was appointed to the zoning hearing board back in 77, 78. It might be over 20 years. And I had some real cases. We had some cases where we approved people's, they apply for a variance. We give them the variance, but then they would take us into court because they felt that we delayed or we took too long or something like this, or it wasn't enough that we gave them, you know. So it's one of these things like on the board, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Yes. Clarence, as you look back over the times from your childhood until now, there have been a lot of changes regarding how the races interact. Can you speak to how you feel those changes have impacted us, and what do you think lies on the horizon ahead for us?
Well, the biggest thing that I could say is, when I was younger, I thought by the time that I had reached the age that I am now, things would be a little bit different, a little bit better. One thing I must say that I don't like is, before we didn't have the opportunities. We wanted the opportunities. Now there's so many opportunities there, and people don't take advantage of them. That's the one thing. And number two, I still say it, I said it 4 years ago and I say it now. There's such a lack of discipline on the part of some of the students. And this really appalls me because they're missing out on so much. There's a lot more opportunity for a young black male to really excel than when I came out of school 40-some years ago. The opportunities are there, but if you don't take advantage of them, what good are they? It's like a man giving you a steak dinner, but he doesn't give you a knife and a fork.
I know that in your work as chairperson of the Students Committee, as a member of the school board, you spend a lot of time being an adjudicator at student hearings and in the cases of disciplinary actions that need to be taken. If you could sum up in one or maybe two sentences some words of wisdom that you would like to impart to the youth of our community here today, what would they be?
Control yourself, learn as much as you can, then try to utilize what you have learned. Those three things is very simple.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And one more thing.
Yes.
Respect your elders and have some respect for authority. The teachers are here to try to impart some knowledge to you, but they're not here to be castigated, vilified, and cursed at.
Clarence, I certainly want to thank you for being a part of our oral history project. You've helped put a different slant on things for us and put a new light on some of the topics that concern our community here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And I thank you for being with us.
Thank you, sir.